So commodity money has existed for years, and we gave, there are many even in the past. People used to walk around with literally buckets of shells and use them as a way of money. You would keep the shells. You would say, okay, it costs so many shells. You'd get a bucket of shells. You'd have your bucket full of shells, and you'd walk around and give shells to somebody in exchange for something. You'd sell stuff in exchange for shells. Silver was used. Tea was used. Tobacco, gold, copper, cocoa beans, alcohol, and salt, surprisingly, was used. Now, these are just some examples of commodity money. Obviously, what's important about commodity is factors of rareness, can it be easily duplicated, etc. And so commodity money actually started to disappear. I think the earliest traces of commodity money falling out of use was even in the 15th century. But paper money and other types of money came about much later. We then had what's called commodity-backed currency. And commodity-backed currency is basically saying that, you know what, we have a paper bill here, but if you ever find one of these, it's very unique because this is blue. It's a blue symbol, and this is called a silver certificate. And that means if you find one of these, you can exchange that $1 bill for its equivalent in silver. And today, it's about 2 grams of silver equals for $1, if I believe, unless I'm mistaken. So you can actually get a commodity, which in this case is silver, for the dollar. And that means it's a commodity-backed currency. Now, what's nice about that is that as we print a certain amount of money, well, we have to make sure we have the silver to back it up. We have to be able to exchange the silver for the money that we're creating. So it kind of limits the amount that we can produce. I mean, granted, the price may change, but at some point, we're basing the amount of money we're producing on a rare item, which is silver. Fiat money is what we have today. And fiat money, and you've got some examples here to your right, is basically trying to resolve the problem of commodity money. Now, commodity money, as we mentioned, is difficult to use. It's cumbersome. You have to carry around salt and shells and gold, which can be heavy. And so it resolves the issue of commodity money. Fiat money grew as economies grew over time, and basically it's a piece of paper, and you see all the examples over here. You see many examples that the government declares to be quote-unquote legal tender, and that usually is written on the money. This paper has no intrinsic value. It's just paper. You can print it, and granted, some of it's very technologically advanced paper, but it's just paper. You can pay your debt with this because it is legally accepted as money or fiat money. Now, the risks with fiat money do exist. Obviously, it may be easy to copy. So we have people that make counterfeit money and try to make counterfeit money. It is not in its nature limited. You can print as much money as you want. We saw that with Venezuela in the last module. Governments can print as many bills as they want. There's no inherent rarity. So we have to manage the rarity. We have to make sure we don't print too much and let things get out of control. And obviously, it's not worth anything. It's just paper. So we have to maintain the perceived value of it over time. If we print too much, the value will fall. So now we'll go into the questions about measuring money. And measuring money looks at specifically monetary aggregates, how we measure the amount of money in the economy. So let's take a look at that. So some of the definitions of money that exist require us to understand a very simple concept in economics, that of liquidity. And liquidity basically defines how quickly we can use a financial asset to buy a good or service. So if I go down to McDonald's and want to buy a hamburger, this is very, very, very liquid. We're talking about a very liquid asset. Would be coins. I can exchange them for a good or service very quickly. I also maybe have a savings account, but my savings account is much less liquid because I can't give somebody my savings account. I have to go out and get cash before I can use my savings. So I have to transform savings into cash and then use the cash. The same is true with, for example, stock in a company or a bond. I can't really give somebody a little piece of my stock in exchange for a hamburger. I have to go sell my stock. I then have to recuperate the money, and then I can buy my hamburger. So liquidity is important. And liquidity defines a lot of the different measures of money. And we'll see that the lower measures of money are more liquid. So there's two primary measures of money. We'll see they're M1 and M2. In some economies we have M0. M0 is currency, and we also have other aggregates, M3 and even up to M4. But the primary two measures we'll look at are M1 and M2. These are monetary aggregates, and they help us to count the amount of money in the economy. The two primary aggregates, here we have M1 and M1 money supply, and here we're looking at coins, currency in circulation, checkable deposits. So these are also called demand deposit because it's your money, it's in a bank, and if you demand it, the bank will give it to you if they have it. So these are on-demand deposits. Also traveler's checks, something we see very little of today, but they were considered part of M1. M2 is all of M1, so we take all of this fun stuff here and we add in some other things. We add in savings deposits, money market funds. These are mutual funds that are basically in the money market. Time deposits like certificates of deposit, money that you can't touch for a certain period of time, or you can touch it with a penalty. So getting it is a little harder, and as you can see, it's much less liquid. Cards, by the way, debit cards and credit cards are not money. A debit card is a way to access your checking account. It's a way to get a hold of the money over here at M1. And credit cards, real credit cards, where you're given money to use but you don't have to pay it right away, well, that's just a short-term loan. It's not money per se. For information, the ECB, the European Central Bank, then tracks the money supply. And here you see the growth of the money supply over time as it's been growing in Europe. Obviously, money grows to support the growth of the economy. Economies are growing when we probably need a little bit more money to make all these transactions. But obviously, we monitor the amount of money growth to make sure it doesn't grow too fast in our economy. And this is the supply in billions of euros. So you have an idea here of the amount of money circulating. This is almost 10,000 billion euros of money.